Jimmy, hold on. 8:18 here, Big 550 KTRS. Tony Messenger, every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Big 550 KTRS and all the time at stltoday.com. Good morning, Tony Messenger.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly. How's
Hi,
everybody
Tony.
doing?
So now that the world is protesting everything, and you have the NFL protesters and the people protesting the NFL and the protesters protesting the protesters, and now you have the protesters here in St. Louis, and you have the city of St. Louis paying tribute to Mr. Smith and people being upset over that. It seems like, Tony Messenger, after reading your last column where you sort of published some of the response you got from some of your previous columns, there seems to be a sense that everyone's got an opinion, but no one's listening to what the other guy's saying.
Well, we saw this in the most recent election. This is the polarized America that we have right now. But what I find interesting in the last few days is that the president elevating Colin Kaepernick's protest of police brutality and doing it in such a ham-fisted and misshapen and racist way actually is helping, I believe, to bring people together. I don't believe I would have expected to see people like Tom Brady and people who are owners of NFL teams who spent millions of dollars electing Donald Trump actually criticizing him. Some of them harshly, some of them kind of mealy-mouthed, we didn't like the statement, we should support our players, etc. But there were some strong statements issued by white Republican NFL owners that said, you know what, this is just too far. When the president is unwilling to criticize people marching under a Nazi flag, and yet he's calling people who are protesting police brutality by simply taking a silent knee during the national anthem. I don't know if I can say this on the radio, so get ready to beat me if I can't.
Hold off. Hold off on it, but we got it. Yeah.
SOBs.
Yeah.
We know what he said, and so that brought, I think, a lot of people to understand. You know what? There's something here, and one of the things I'm going to write about this week is helping people understand how connected these two things are. The NFL protests and what Colin Kaepernick started over a year ago are directly connected to what's going on here in St. Louis. They aren't separate issues. They're the same issue. It's black people standing up against police brutality and in favor of civil rights. That's the issue. It has little to do with the flag, little to do with the anthem. That the knee during the anthem is the march in the street. It's the form of protest, but the protest is against police brutality.
Well, I will say this. It's not just all black people. I think you would argue that there's a lot of white people out there, too, who are protesting and or support Colin Kaepernick and his message, what he's trying to say. But Donald Trump did something that I don't think he meant to do, and that was Colin Kaepernick and the taking of a knee was sort of not a very big story. It wasn't getting a lot of attention. People had sort of moved past that. Colin Kaepernick wasn't in the league for whatever reason. It wasn't really an issue. And then he pours gasoline on the fire, and all of a sudden, it's the biggest story in the country.
Right. And in the meantime, and this is one of the things, sadly, the president is genius about. In the meantime, he's signed yet another travel order discriminating against Muslims all over the world and trying to stop them from coming to the United States. And so he's distracted from that. That would have been a front page story otherwise, and it still should be, because it's a seed from the same garden of racism that the president is growing, and it's a real problem for our nation. And one of the things that is interesting and I think heartening about what's happened in the last couple of days is there are some powerful statements by white people recognizing the racism that is inherent in what the president said and is trying to do. If you haven't seen it, the video from San Antonio Spurs coach Greg Popovich talking about white privilege and talking about what's going on in this country right now is really powerful. There's another video from a white Dallas sportscaster who's a veteran, served in the military forces, who talks about the Constitution and how we as Americans diminish and disrespect the flag all the time. That taking a knee during the anthem doesn't disrespect the flag. I mean, there's some powerful things out there that are a little bit of an awakening. So people are starting to understand, you know what? The black people in the streets complaining about this issue, they really have something to say, and maybe we should start listening a little bit more.
Tony, are you going to? I like that. I don't. I kind of like reading your mail. You should do more of that where you post some of your comments, both positive and negative.
Yeah, I mean, I like doing that every now and then, and obviously I got a lot of response to my column about the Help Wanted ad for the police chief the other day, and frankly, I think that one has aged well. I think the interim police chief has taken himself out of consideration probably for being the next police chief.
Wow.
But yeah, I do. I get a lot of mail, and some of it's interesting. And one of the things that's interesting, and I may write about this, is a lot of times when I get hateful mail, and I respond to them, and they actually a reader is shocked that I've written back to them,
right,
and done so without speaking with the same vitriol with which they started their email to me. They apologize. They don't necessarily change their mind, but they apologize. Yeah, I guess I was kind of mean to you. I guess I was kind of a jerk. Thanks for being so nice in your response. And it just strikes me, you know, if we had more of these kinds of conversations in a coffee shop, face-to-face, not hiding behind social media, not hiding behind email, maybe people would start the conversation a little bit nicer and thus perhaps be open to listening to what the person has to say that has had a different lived experience than you, that has had a different experience with police, that actually has something to say that you might want to hear, whether it is entirely pro-police or whether it is entirely understanding the African-American experience in St. Louis and in other major cities in this country. Those kinds of conversations can be a lot easier to have when you start with politeness.
It is amazing to me. I do the same thing. When I get a hateful email, you call them, you reach out, you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't, we can agree to disagree, or I think you heard that wrong, or I apologize, or whatever. In 99% of the time I was having a bad day. I reread what I wrote. Boy, that was really mean. I apologize. Right? I mean,
yeah.
It's amazing how once you respond to them, oh wait, somebody actually read this. I'm sorry, there was a human on the other end of this rant. It's really interesting.
We have lost in this polarization that we've seen increase in the last few years. We've lost a little bit of humanity, and I think we need to do. We have a lot of work as a society to get that back.
Tony, always a pleasure. Tuesdays and Thursdays here, and STLtoday.com. Have a good week.
Good to talk to you.
8:27.